do you think of this one?
Looks good, the same thing I have.
Great.
Almost.
Good, let's get going.
We're going.
The class?
The class.
We always go this time.
The class has been canceled.
That's not been canceled.
Yes, it was. He said that yesterday. We were sitting next to each other.
He didn't say anything about class being canceled. He gave us a homework assignment,
Man.
signed us as partners, and let's go.
He said, class will be canceled tomorrow. So take this down, do the homework, and it's due on Friday.
Right.
Which tomorrow is Friday.
I know, but class
today
isn't
is
canceled, so
Thursday.
let's go.
We had this.
I'm leaving without you. I'm not waiting.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna wait, but I'm only gonna wait 3 minutes, because then we'll really be late for sure. For class, let's go.
There is no class, so you won't be late, okay?
Well, that's one argument that's easy to resolve. Either class has or has not been canceled, and they'll know shortly. Arguing with a friend is one thing, but as you know, arguing on paper is a different matter. In this program, we'll be reviewing some argumentative essays students have written for their assignment. Along with their instructor, they will critique each other's work, keeping in mind the important elements of an argumentative essay. Consider the audience, establish credibility, and acknowledge the other side. Remember that a good argumentative essay is based on logic, whether inductive or deductive, and how well you build your case. Let's drop in on these students and see how they've done.
Good morning, class. I'm glad to see you here, and today we're going to continue our discussion on writing the argumentative essay. When we met last time, we talked about the difference between an arguable statement and a non-arguable one. And we completed those exercises to make you more proficient in that area. We also talked about addressing the appropriate reader, knowing who your audience is. And finally, we highlighted establishing credibility. You needed to determine what was necessary to make you a believable writer so that reader would understand and believe what you have written. Now, you have completed your essays, and what I'd like to do in class today is to have us to read those essays or portions of the essays to point out 3 important elements. The first being identifying your audience. Secondly, establishing your credibility. And thirdly, persuading your reader. Now, you can do that in this writing experience in the most creative way that you can find. But you always must remember that you have to have an audience in mind when you write, because you can focus your comments more specifically to that audience. And then that helps you gain that confidence that what you have to say is appropriate. Now, when you establish your credibility, you are able to present factual information that adds substance to what you write. And then the whole purpose of the entire experience is to persuade the reader. Now, one thing I hope that we find in the writings that you will share with us today is that when you persuade a reader, it's important for you to present your point of view. But in order for that point of view to be informed, you've got to present a balanced statement. You've got to show your reader that you are aware of what the opposition is thinking about your subject, and then show the fallacy or the problems with the opposition. That way you present yourself in a more fair manner, and you don't sound as if you are standing on your soapbox and just pushing your ideas into someone's head. One thing that I hope you carry with you as it relates to argumentative writing is that this style of writing causes you to become a more mature writer. We talked a lot last time about opinions. You know, everybody has an opinion. But when you write an argumentative essay, you find out what other people's opinions are. And then when you settle in on your thesis, your opinion can become a more informed opinion because you are aware of what others are thinking, and you can become more solid in your approach to the subject at hand. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of talking today because I do want to hear from you. I've given you the assignment to try your hand at this argumentative essay. So let us take it element by element and see what you have produced. The first point that we want to talk about is identifying the audience. When you concern yourself with identifying the audience, you've got to ask yourself the question, you know, who are your readers? And you focus in your mind who those persons are. And focus then your vocabulary, your approach, and your writings to that particular audience. You also ask the question, what are their beliefs? Because if you know what your audience believes, then you know what you need to do to convince them of your point of view. And then the third question, obviously, would be what points should be addressed. So once you know who that audience is, once you know what their beliefs are, and obviously you are aware of your own perspective, then you will be certain of what points you should address in your essay. I'm going to ask Rosemary to read, let's try your first paragraph.
Should a college degree be trimmed in gold? Job placement in a middle or upper management position has often been reserved for the person with a college degree. A quick glance through the classifieds reflects that most companies have educational standards or requirements. At times, the BA in Business Master's Preferred is chosen over the years of experience an employee within the company is able to offer. One can argue that the degree holders have exercised stamina and fortitude by achieving this accomplishment. They have a theoretical basis for any business decision that might need to be made and a wealth of knowledge at their disposal. Their inexperience manifests itself as an energetic and eager-to-please candidate. However, an employee who has been working with the same company for an extensive period of time can surely be attributed these same qualities. In addition, he has shown dedication, loyalty, and a working functional knowledge of the company's operations. Companies would benefit by recognizing the strength behind motivating their cohesive, productive working pool by acknowledging the work accomplishments of the individual through job advancement. Experienced and dedicated employees can be a better choice for promotion than an inexperienced employee with a degree.
Thank you, Rosemary. Let me ask you the question, Rosemary. Who was your audience in that essay?
Well, I was directing this to company executives or the personnel department, perhaps, of a large corporation.
Okay. Can you think of perhaps a setting that this kind of comment could be made to those executives?
Well, when they're looking for to hire someone in a particular position and they're weighing maybe someone with a degree or someone without, or someone within the company, they have to look at both sides. They have to determine whether the degree stands on its merit or whether the individual's work performance.
Now, you know, imagine that employer at that particular time when he has the employee who's within the company and the one who comes from the outside. If Rosemary could have, you know, presented her point of view to that employer, perhaps, you know, she would have a chance of convincing him to accept the experienced worker, because she's established that perspective through that thesis statement. And let's talk about the thesis statement. What is your thesis statement?
The thesis statement for this is the last sentence in the paragraph: experienced and dedicated employees can be a better choice for promotion than an inexperienced employee with a degree.
Okay. And so obviously that perspective of the experienced employee is the one that this essay covers. And we look to Rosemary in this essay to continue, convincing the reader that the experienced employee has the most merit or the best merit than someone from outside the company. Rosemary, I think that was a very good try for you to, get us involved in that subject, and you have stated your thesis very effectively there. Class, let's look at a second element of good argumentative writing, and that is establishing credibility. And I'd like for Marilyn to read her first paragraph so that we can determine how well she's established credibility.
Okay. What the PTA doesn't know. A look at the decline of the public school system. Recently, 60 Minutes gave Americans across the country a chance to compare and evaluate the educational levels of high school seniors throughout the world. They featured a segment surveying a sample of students from all industrialized nations, evaluating abilities in 3 critical areas: math, science, and language. The disturbing findings concluded that American seniors scored lower than any other country in all 3 categories. What could possibly have transacted within our schools that would allow for the demise of once prepared, energetic, and educated graduating senior class? The public school system is comprised of overfilled, underfunded schools, staffed by underqualified teachers and attended by unmotivated students.
Well, class, I don't think we need to ask what her thesis statement is. She has certainly shown us that she's got a lot of power behind that statement. A lot of sentiment is coming forth in that statement. But let's talk about her credibility. Do you believe her? Rosemary, you're shaking your head. What makes her so believable?
Well, she talks about a survey in that first paragraph and what the findings of that survey are. And so that gives me some facts. It makes me believe it.
Is there anything else believable about this first paragraph? Tom, did you see anything there?
Yes, I did. When she wrote in her essay about 60 Minutes, about how it had gave Americans across the country a chance to compare and evaluate their educational levels, I saw the attribution to her essay from that point of view, and that gave it credibility.
Okay, in terms of her considering her audience, she assumes that her audience are 60-minute viewers and they believe what they see on television every Sunday evening. And so that introduction with 60 Minutes gave us some common ground to look at this essay from. And then when she went to that powerful sentence, then we could understand that maybe this experience that she has had is not just a singular experience, that somebody else has had that experience as well. Now, Marilyn, I am just intrigued at this point to find out, why you feel so strongly and have stated that sentence so powerfully. What happened?
Well, when I lived in another city, my daughter attended in an elementary school, and I was a member of the PTA there. And I looked at the quality of instruction, and I was very disappointed. Okay. So I decided to look into that further.
All right. And I think we'll find in the essay that when she looked further, she found that she was not the only one who had experienced that. Let's look at her thesis statement. Now, we talked in the last lesson about, how to write a strong statement. If you view strength in this statement, what do you think makes it a powerful statement? Now, you don't have to take my word for face value. Look at it for yourself. Who would want to comment on that? I'm not going to let Marilyn comment because it's her sentence. I want someone else to give us a perspective there.
Well, some of the things that I had noticed in her thesis statement were the strong adjectives that she had used in her sentence, such as overfilled, underfunded, underqualified, and unmotivated. Those was very, very strong adjectives.
Okay. Anything else in that sentence? I can't help but try to look at it from a literary point of view. There's a little...
Well, I think the repetition of the adjectives gives it a rhythm, and it makes it powerful by doing that.
Okay. All right. Marilyn, you see what you've done with that statement? You've really given your audience something to look forward to reading. Now, we certainly hope that you have followed through with the contract that you've set up for your readers. We know that a third element in writing good argumentative essays is to use supporting as well as opposing research. Oftentimes, students think that if you use the opposing point of view, you weaken your argument. But that's not the case. By acknowledging the opposition, you strengthen your argument because you can show the fallacy in the opposing point of view. And you acknowledge that it is present. You can't do away with it, but you can work around it in order to prove your point. Tom, I'd like for you to read your essay, and I want everybody to, to listen very intently. Obviously, we'll assess it for the way he identifies his audience. We'll assess it for, the strength of his thesis statement, but we also want to listen very carefully to hear if he has an opposing point of view being presented in his essay. Tom?
Okay. Higher education and today's workforce. Automation in today's technological society has dispelled the need for the unskilled and semi-skilled laborer. The demand for the professional employee trained in managerial, technical, and scientific areas continue to increase despite the employment concerns resulting from economic recession. This change of emphasis in America's workforce integrates the advancements brought on by technological development. In order to have an advanced industrial culture, a society should have a well-educated, creative, and adaptable labor force.
Okay. And reiterate now your thesis statement.
In order to have an advanced industrial culture, a society should have a well-educated, creative, and adaptable labor force.
All right, so we're going to look to this essay to see how well Tom convinces us that this industrial culture should have those three components: the well-educated, creative, and adaptable labor force. That's the boundaries now that he's set in this essay. Tom, will you continue?
Career specialization has become an integral part of the infrastructure of labor development. Higher education allows the individual to pursue a detailed and complete theoretical and practical study in a selected area, a luxury which is not often afforded by on-the-job training. Nursing is an example of a profession where the individual is required to complete a pre-established curriculum of study in order to perform the duties required in the occupation. A list of subject areas might include anatomy, physiology, treatment of diseases, obstetrics, pediatrics, nutrition, pharmacology, and nursing techniques. Some liberal art courses are also required to ensure a well-rounded dimension to the education process. Both aspects of study enable the student to communicate effectively and efficiently with the patient, the doctor, and the entire hospital staff. Student nursing follows the completion of the general and science course of study. Hands-on experience under guided supervision puts theory and knowledge to the test. Determination, commitment, and hard work guarantee the success of the student in the healthcare arena. The continued development of today's society depends heavily on the integrity and perseverance of those advocating higher education. The pursuit and manifestation of knowledge are a key to a truly sophisticated, creative, and adaptable labor force.
Well, Tom, I need to pose the question to you. Did you include the opposing point of view in your essay?
Well, after reading this essay again out loud, I realized that I didn't. And if I would have, which I should have done rather, my opposing argument would have been that people without degrees in the workforce can succeed, have successful lives without having a degree in a particular field to work in.
Well, if you say that, then you're fighting with yourself. What you probably need to say, if you bring that out as the opposing point of view, is that you do realize that there are people who make a living without having the degree. However, you feel, strongly that the degree will produce this adaptable and creative labor force, because that educational experience will broaden that person's experience. But you're right to point out the fact that the strongest opposition would be those people who are pursuing jobs and making a living without having the benefit of the education or the formal degree. I'm glad you realized that, Tom, because your argument could be more balanced if you had included that opposing point of view. Well, I'm still searching now. We need to find an example of an opposing point of view. Now, Marilyn, you had a real strong essay and a powerful point of view. Did you cover an opposing point of view?
Well, I realize now that I really didn't. I really didn't include the other side, which is there are qualified teachers out there that do make a difference in the educational system. And even though that wasn't my experience, there must be people out there that do make it through.
So you see what can easily happen in argument? We can get so wound up in our own perspective that we forget the other point of view. And then, all of that time that you spent establishing credibility, Marilyn, in the beginning, might dissipate if you don't balance that essay by acknowledging that opposing point of view. I'm still searching. I need an example.
Well, I think that I did.
Well, Rosemary?
I tried to point out the advantages of hiring someone with a degree and also the advantages of hiring someone who has worked within the company. So I tried to present both points.
Can you give us an idea of how you presented that opposing point of view?
Well, I gave examples of the advantages of hiring within the company. For example, you would not have the costs of advertising and agency fees.
Rosemary, why don't you do this for us? If you remember Rosemary's essay, her thesis was experienced and dedicated employees can be a better choice for promotion than an inexperienced employee with a degree. Read that paragraph that begins hiring a degreed candidate, and let's see how that presents that opposing point of view.
Hiring a degreed candidate from the outside can involve many costs: advertising, interviewing, agency fees, training costs, and in most cases, a higher starting salary. Once an applicant has been selected, the employer still runs the risk that the new employee may not demonstrate or generate the dedication and loyalty necessary for a successful leader.
Okay, and let me tell you something that Rosemary did in that essay. After she gave us her thesis statement, and you can see it for yourself, she went right into that opposing point of view. So she didn't, go right away to prove her point. She took some time to acknowledge what the opposition had to say. Now, that is not a standard, but it worked for Rosemary in that essay. The only standard that we have here is that somewhere in the body of the essay, you do spend some time presenting that opposing point of view so that you can balance that argumentative treatment of the subject. Okay, let us then review what we've done today. Good argumentative writing helps you become a more mature writer. Your opinions become more informed opinions, and that's a key word that you want to remember, because of the kind of research that you've done to establish and strengthen your own feeling about your subject. Don't be too afraid, to express your opinion, because you know that you have solid ground to support that opinion. And that supporting evidence must come through in the paper. As well, you must present the opposing point of view. Rather you establish your credibility strongly in the beginning or fuse that throughout the essay is left to you and your style of writing. But that element is very important because if you are going to persuade someone, that reader must believe what you have to say. That concludes our lesson for today. We'll see you next time.
Well, they sounded like pretty effective arguments to me. And you can write argumentative essays too if you stick to the principles we've discussed. Remember, it's just like arguing with your friend. The only difference is you're arguing on paper.
This is due tomorrow, so tomorrow we won't have any homework for the weekend.
It's due today, and we have
Tomorrow's
class.
Friday.
If it wasn't due till tomorrow, why are we sitting here wasting our day doing homework? Because it's due, so let's go.
So we don't have to do anything tomorrow. Because this is due tomorrow, so we don't have
This is
homework
due in
during
about
the
4 minutes.
weekend.
Okay, you got 2 minutes.